When I started learning tarot in 2017, I was able to memorize the cards within just a few days, and that's exactly what I want for you, and that's what this video is going to be about. I'm Anya Esma, and I've been making tarot YouTube videos for 7, going on 8 years now. And I know how great it feels when you know what you're talking about, when you do a spread for yourself or for others, and you just have an idea of what it could mean because you already have the 78 cards memorized. And yes, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. And I'm going to make it as simple as I can, but it does take dedication at the end of the day. But you're motivated to learn tarot, right? That's why you're here. You have some motivation to learn it, whether that is for you or to read for others. And I promise that it's easier than you think, probably, and that we're going to figure this out together. So, why even learn the cards though? Because I know there's a lot of intuitive tarot readers out there who maybe never learned the meanings of the cards and just read by the images that they see and by the associations that they get. They don't really concern themselves with the traditional card meanings that I will be talking about here. But the thing is, intuition is great, but knowing all the cards by heart just feels even better because you just know what you're talking about. As soon as you see the cards, you already have an idea. And it also helps you read decks that don't have images, that we call pip decks, for example, because not all of them have beautiful images like this that help you remember them. And then you have a card that you maybe don't know the meaning of, or the image is completely different, and then you just have that knowledge to fall back on because you have studied the meanings of the 78 cards, and it's just easier that way. Also, if you learn all of the 78 cards by heart, it means that you are teaching your mind, which includes your subconscious mind as well, a way of communicating with you. Because tarot, in the end, is also a language that your subconscious mind can use in order to communicate with your conscious mind. So the effect of knowing the cards is really deep. It makes your readings more fleshed out rather than just feeling lackluster. If you're just using your intuition, maybe you are doubting yourself a lot, you're not sure what it all really means. And I think that if you know all 78 cards, you just feel more confident, you feel more comfortable with the cards, and you know them better. And just like with anything in life, if you know a lot about a certain topic, you're just going to be more comfortable talking about it, more comfortable understanding it when you do tarot for yourself. And that's really the biggest effect that it's going to have on you if you know all of the cards. So, let's start with what deck you are using. If you have a standard Rider-Waite-Smith deck, just like I have here, for example, this is the standard Rider-Waite-Smith, right? We know and love what the cards look like. That is okay. You also could have the Thoth Tarot, the Crowley Tarot. That's great too, as long as there's images on it. You shouldn't start with a pip deck or something like that, where it's just number cards and no images. My first tip, though, is if you want to learn the system, look for a deck that you really love. Because for me, this was the Mucha Tarot. What I'm holding here right now is the Mucha Tarot. And this one has images that are very close to the Rider-Waite tarot deck, but they just resonate with me a little bit more than the classic Rider-Waite images. So having this deck, it was so much easier for me to remember all of the meanings because I really went deep with this deck. You can go deep with a Rider-Waite-Smith, no problem. But for me, it was just easier if I loved the pictures a little bit more. I like the Rider-Waite too. I'm not saying anything against it, but you know how it is. If you relate to something more deeply, it's easier to remember. So look for a deck that you really like, that for a start is close to the Rider-Waite-Smith deck or is the Rider-Waite. If you can, I would recommend you lay out all the cards in front of you now or later. You can do this while you watch the video, you can do it later. Take notes as I'm talking so you have a first grasp of how the system works. Because the key to remembering all of the cards is really to understand the system that is behind it, the logic that is behind it. And essentially it's the same as remembering numbers when you were a kid, because you don't really learn numbers on their own. You can only understand them in their context. You learn all of them together, right? You understand how the one relates to the two, or you understand what happens when you add 3 and 4 together. You know that after 5 comes the 6, and all of these, logical things that you have to learn. And I see tarot cards the same way. They don't exist in a vacuum. Just like a number cannot exist in a vacuum on its own, the cards don't as well. For example, you cannot define what a 2 is without also defining what is a 4. 2 plus 2 is 4. You cannot understand what a 2 is if you don't know what a 1 is. 1 is 1 and 2 is 2. And without each other, they don't really make sense. It's a number system that exists that you have to understand in order to understand the single parts of it. Of course, tarot cards are a bit different because they do have individual meanings. But let me just get away with that metaphor because it came to my mind when I was scripting this video. And I think it shows really well how much easier it is to remember things when you understand the logic and the system behind it. Because that's how mathematics works, and that's kind of how tarot works as well. Don't worry, this isn't maths. There will be numerology in this video, but it's not maths. Maybe that wasn't a good comparison because people are afraid of maths, but I hope you're not afraid of a few numbers. You get the gist of what I'm trying to say. Yes, so the gist is you need to understand the system so that you can really understand each tarot card on its own. And we're going to start with that now. We're going to start understanding the logic and the structure behind tarot. We're going to go from the real basics to the nitty gritty and go really deep. So, starting basic, we start really easy with the minor arcana. Remember, you can use a deck of your choice. I really recommend getting one where the images really light you up, where you're really loving the images, because that makes it a lot easier. So the first logical split that you probably know already, but I will explain it still because remember, we're going from very simple to more complicated, more detailed. We're zooming in. You need to understand that there is the minor arcana and the major arcana. That is essentially the most meaningful split in tarot. The minor arcana are the 56 cards that you already have in a traditional deck. You know those already. You have the cards 1 through 10 times 4 because there are 4 suits. And then you have the 4 court cards 4 times as well for the 4 suits. So that already makes up 56 cards. That's a huge chunk. And the other big chunk is the 22 cards of the major arcana, which starts with cards like the Fool, the Magician, the High Priestess, all of those good major arcana cards that we will also talk about later. So that is the first very meaningful split that you need to understand. And first, we will look at the minor arcana, the 56 cards of a normal traditional deck. But we're going to split that up further. I already mentioned it just now, and you probably know this as well. The minor arcana is split into 4 suits. So you have the wands, the cups, the pentacles, and the swords. And what you need to understand is that they all have their own element. The wands are fire, the cups are water, the swords are air, and the pentacles are earth, right? It's really simple. We've we know this system of having four suits, four elements. So that makes it really easy to deal with the four suits. So that already like gives us something to hold on to, and it is a really easy association. So when you see a card and it is from the wand suit, you already know, it has something to do with fire. So let's go deeper into what that actually means, because then as soon as you see a card, you will have associations in your mind. Feel free to write those down, to expand on them, um, as you learn them, because we all have our own associations with these elements as well, of course. So first of all, it's really easy to remember. The fire suit, the suit of wands, revolves around passion. It revolves around intensity, our soul as well, spirituality. You know, that fire that burns within us. That's what the wands are. That's what the suit of fire is. Then with the water suit, which is the suit of cups, of course, it revolves more around emotion, the natural flow of things, the natural flow of feelings, of emotions. It has a certain ease to it, this flowy quality. It's about healing, it's about relationships. So that's the suit of cups. Then we have the air suit, which is the suit of swords, of course, that revolves around the cutting edge of logic, rationale, the mind, intellect, words, but also communication, finding the right words, opinions, everything that has to do with the head. And then we have the earth suit, which is the pentacles, sometimes also called the coins. And that, of course, revolves all around the physical reality. That includes your physical health. It can also include money, finances, wealth, everything in that department. But yeah, also your physical health, the sensual world, and the joys of everything you can, touch in this world, everything you can eat in this world and see. All of these pleasures that have to do with our senses have to do with the suit of pentacles. So that's it. Boom. You already have a rough idea of what each card means. As soon as you see it, you know what suit it is, at least if it's from the Minor Arcana. So you already know, okay, if you see a Cups card, this might have to do with my emotional landscape. It might have to do with feelings. It might have to do with relationships, with, your personal life. So you already have a rough little idea in your mind. And once you remember this, which I think is pretty simple because, the elemental associations are pretty simple and logical to us, I would say. At least in the West, we have kind of similar associations with these four elements. So it just kind of makes sense. And from that, we can go into the more nitty gritty now. Take a breather. I will take a sip of water. This video is going to be unedited, so here we go. Like this video, and then we can go on. Because it's going to be a lot of information. Because now, after this little short breath that we took, we're going to talk about numbers. Numbers. When it comes to the numbers 1 through 10, which is the numbers that are important to us, because as you know, the four suits each are numbered 1 through 10. And they also have the court cards. We'll talk about those later. For now, we're going to talk about the 1 to 10 cards. There's a numerology you can memorize that makes it a lot easier to understand the cards, but it's very complex, and I have a whole video about that. I will link that down below. I will give you a short-ish explanation. It's not really going to be all that short because I kind of have to go into detail, but if you want an even more detailed version, then you can watch the other video. Feel free to take notes, pause the video, take out the corresponding cards of what I'm going to talk about, because it will be a lot probably. So first of all, we talk about the 1, the aces, as we also call it. And the aces are next to me. I have this cute little table where I set up a bunch of tarot cards, so I will be picking from there. The aces are essentially like a burst of energy, a whole dose of fresh, unbound potential and energy of that suit. So if you look at the Ace of Cups, for example, which I have here, it is this raw, emotional, intuitive energy that has no direction yet, maybe, but it enters into your life. It is present in the tarot spread that you have. That is why some people say if you draw the Ace of Pentacles, for example, let me show you here. The Ace of Pentacles stands for, a fresh dose of money, for example. It could be other things too. It could be health as well, but most of the time people read it as money coming in or just as this monetary energy that you can work with. Then going towards the 2, that is going to be how you process, how you use and think about the energy that you got in the aces. So you already see that this is going to be the cards building on top of each other. It's a story that builds on top of each other. You get fresh energy. Now you got to choose what to do with it. So if you look at the 2 of Swords, for example, you have this inward look here of reflection, of cutting yourself out from the outside world and just reflecting on what you're going to do with that energy, with the whole energy of intellect, of words, of communication. And the 3, we're still pretty simple here. It gets a lot more complicated as we advance higher numbers, but the 3 is the first step of investing that energy. That's also really easy to understand. It is basically the first manifestation in the real world of that energy that is represented by the suit. So, for example, here with the 3 of Cups, we have the idea of community, the idea of coming together. It shows the expansion of the 2 of Cups, where you only have 2 people standing with each other. The 3 of Cups is then 3 people. So it kind of expands and makes the energy more physical. The 4 is the stabilization of the energy from before. That is especially present with the 4 of Pentacles. You have an image of a very stable person, and you can imagine the 4 is like a 4-legged chair. A 3-legged chair doesn't stand very well. It can, but you would rather sit on a 4-legged chair if you want ultimate stability. So that's what the 4 cards are about. It is about a stable representation of that energy of the suit. Then, of course, we cannot have stability without the story of how that stability is destroyed. And that is the 5. The 5 is about the restructuring, the destruction, the shakeup of that stable energy that we have or had before in the Force. So, with the 5 of Swords, for example, you have a battle lost, and the people who were in the battle having to now think, what do I do now? Did I win? Did I lose? Where do I go? What do I do? So it is the destruction of that. We also have that in the 5 of Wands, of course, where you just have an outright battle going on. Now, the 6 is where it gets a bit more complicated, because after this destruction of stability, you have to find a new way of relating to the world. As I said, with the 5 of Swords, you see this especially well. The 5 of Swords is a great representation of whether you win or lose, there is destruction, and you now have to rethink your life and your relation to the world. So with the 6 of Swords, for example, we have this idea of moving on, this idea of the world doesn't work for you the way it was, your surroundings don't work for you anymore, so you're moving on. The 6 of Wands is about celebrating your wins. Doesn't mean whether you won the last time, whatever happened, or You are just reflecting on old wins. It's about celebrating yourself. And then the Six of Pentacles is about using your resources to bring balance back to the world. So all of the sixes are about somehow relating to the outside world in a new way after that destruction of stability. See, I told you it's getting more complicated. With a seven, we also have something a bit more complicated, which is kind of the dramatization of the decisions from before. And the seven is all about deepening your understanding of the world. You keep walking your path, you keep going down that journey, and you're understanding the world in a deeper way. So, for example, with the Seven of Wands, remember with the six, we kind of had this idea of the ego, you won, you're great. And then with the seven, you have to defend your position, which is the natural follow up of following your ego, celebrating your wins maybe a little bit too much. Then you have to defend your position, you have to defend who you are and what you stand for. So that's what the Seven of Wands is all about. And then in the Seven of Cups, you have decided in the Six of Cups to see the world with the eyes of a child again. The world seems a totally different place, but now you also have to decide, where do I go from here? It makes you decide that you cannot be stuck in the magic, you cannot be stuck in the magic of the world. You also kind of have to decide what you want to go for. And with the Seven of Cups here, we have a representation of wealth, a representation of fame, a representation of marriage, of spirituality, and all of these things. So that's what the sevens are about. And then the eight is all about power and motion. It's about taking opportunities, not dwelling in the past. And we have this intense energy, for example, with the Eight of Wands, where you have new opportunities, new motion is coming in, but you are probably stressed out by it because it's a lot of energy just kind of falling down on you. And then with the Eight of Cups, we also have this idea of motion. Even though there are seven full cups, maybe, eight full cups, the person is moving on from it. So also this idea of letting go and bringing motion into things that were maybe a little bit stagnant before. Because this is more of a card of stagnation. This is a card of stagnation because you stay in the same place and you are having to decide what happens next. So that's what the eight is about. And then with the nine, we have the idea of reflecting on the whole journey, about the cycles that you are stuck in relation to the element of the suit, for example. We have the Nine of Wands, where the question arises whether the journey was actually worth it, whether defending yourself so vehemently was actually worth it, or whether it alienated everyone that was close to you. And the Nine of Swords is the same. It's about nightmares. It's about the decisions you've made haunting you. So the nine is the card of reflection. And then with a 10, we have the completion of the journey. I don't have my 10s here, but that's okay. Where are my 10s? Gone. Would have loved to show you, but my 10s are gone. So it's about completion. It's about feeling equipped to take the next journey, because this journey is not the end. You also have to go on to the next step. And that is what the 10s are about. For example, from the 9 of Wands to the 10 of Wands, we don't have such a big change in the card. The person is standing here, and in the 10 of Wands, oh, there they are. In the 10 of Wands, they are holding a lot of wands in their hands. So the change isn't that big, but you're noticing, okay, this person realized they alienated everyone, so this person now has to carry all of the weight on their own, essentially. And in the 10 of Swords, we also have this idea of, payback, redemption for past actions, carrying the consequences, taking the consequences of your actions from the past. And whereas in the 10 of Pentacles, we have something quite positive. We have this ultimate legacy that was built by giving back to the community, by, you know, really reflecting what you do with your wealth rather than just keeping it all in the same place. So I think when we look at those stories, we see that after the 5 is where the decision comes in that then decides your fate to the 10. Because with the cups, we also have a quite positive tens card, whereas 1 through 5 are a bit more negative. And then after that, in the 6, there's this decision that happens that brings you on the track to the positive ending in the 10. Whereas with the swords, maybe the decision wasn't that positive that you took in the 6, and you end up with the 10 of swords, which is not such a rosy prospect. So you can kind of split it into 2 again, where 1 through 5 is one aspect, and then 6 through 10 is the next part of the chapter with the numerology. Okay. I know that was a lot, but if you remember those keywords with the numbers plus the elements, you're already really good. You already know a lot of the cards. You already know 40 cards and have like a meaning popping up in your mind once you learn that. So we already have more than half essentially by just covering the 1 through 10 minor arcana in detail. Okay, that's not all though of the minor arcana. We have the court cards too. Before that, we take another breather, put away your pen, breathe, take a second. I will take a sip. You can take a sip. And then you can also you can comment on the video if you've learned something so far, and then we're going to continue. All right. So with the court cards, same as with the numerology, I have really in-depth videos about all of the court cards. So this is going to be more of an overview. The 4 court cards, as you know, hopefully, maybe, are the pages, the knights, the queens, and then the kings. Depending on the deck, these are named a little bit differently, but essentially you always have 4 cards as the court cards. And there are 2 things that will help you read the court cards with confidence. The first thing is that the order in which they are, which is, as I said, page, knight, queen, king, gives you a clue as to how experienced they are, as to how mature the energy that they have, the energy that they represent is. So they grow in maturity. The page is like a newcomer. It's a newbie in the energy of that suit. I like to imagine, for example, with the page of swords here, it is essentially someone who is new to the kingdom of swords, someone who is new to the kingdom of the mind, intelligence, communication, words, everything that the swords and the element of air represent. This page is new to it, and they are just now learning about all of that. With the page of pentacles, you could say this person is ready to learn about health, about wealth. And also, side note, they don't always represent people. Sometimes it is taught like that, but I don't think the court cards necessarily always represent people. They can represent energies that you can bring into your life as well. So there we go. I feel like my ears are really red probably because I'm in my air energy. All of my blood is going into my head, which is kind of funny because I was just talking about the Page of Swords. So those are the pages. Then if you look at the knights right here, for example, the Knight of Swords, they are more experienced and they charge forward with everything they've learned so far, even if maybe their knowledge is a little bit lacking. You know, it reminds me of how when we start learning something new, we think we know it all. There comes a point where at first we think we know nothing, then we study it a bit and we're like, oh, I get it now. I know everything now. Um, I think that happens with astrology to a lot of people, where you learn about the 12 signs and then you're like, I get it now, I know it. But then you realize, no, you don't actually. You don't know anything once you start learning about decans and degrees and all of that. And that's kind of what the knights represent. It's this energy of a first burst of knowledge. You are confident in something. It is a confident energy, but it is also an energy that should be more curious and more open to learning, maybe on the shadow side. And then with the Queen of the King, the Queen of the King, the Queen and the King, they are essentially the ultimate last form, the most experienced in those areas. So, for example, if you have the King and the Queen of Cups, let me get them out here for you. Here we are, the Queen and the King of Cups. If you look at those, it means that they have a very deep understanding of their emotions and they work with their emotions rather than against them. With the swords, it would maybe mean that they have a very deep understanding of words. They know they're very skilled at diplomacy. So these are very experienced energies that these cards bring in. And if you look at the dichotomy, of course, we kind of have this gender dichotomy here. So classically, you would say the king is a bit more action oriented, putting that energy of the suit to the test, whereas the queen is a little bit more reflective, receptive, more that emotive wisdom rather than action based wisdom. And I see them as equals. Of course, some people might say, oh, the queen is below the king. I see them as equals. It is the equal energy. It's just different, different, what do you say, manifestations of the energy of the suit. So that's what you get. Secondly, so that was the first part of the court cards. The first thing you need to understand is the order in which they are and what they represent according to that. And then secondly, you can remember that the court cards also have elements, which means that you can combine the element of the court card with the element of the suit. So for example, if you take the Page of Cups, the pages are earth because they are the basis for everything. They're like the beginning. Some people maybe would define it differently. I see it like that. So the Page of Cups would be water energy because of the suit, but also earth energy because of it being a page. And then with the knights, you have fire, the more active element of passion. With queens, you have water, which is that emotive wisdom. And with king, you have air, which is more logical wisdom. So you can think about how those elements combine with the elements of each suit. So yeah, that is as much detail as I will go into. I go into that a lot in my court card videos. I will link those down below. And then you can understand it better. So that's it for the Minor Arcana. Whoop, we did it. If you understand that logic, you will be really, really well equipped to read most cards, because as soon as you see them, you're like, okay, that's the number, that's the element, or it's a page, that's the element of it, and you already have some keywords and some key energies in your mind. So also a little interlude here. Many people are so afraid to look at guidebooks as well. If they read for other people, it's okay if you do that. I have seen YouTube tarot readers read guidebooks just to get another perspective. It's not unprofessional, it's not bad. Don't be afraid. You can look at the guidebooks, you can Google the cards. You don't need to know all of them by heart immediately. It takes time, but the more you try it, you will get there faster, the more you read. Yep. Okay. Take a breather again before we get into the really big chunk, which is the Major Arcana. I'm getting really warm, so I will take another sip of water. You should do the same. Stay hydrated. Comment below what you've learned so far. and like the video if you haven't yet. So, the Major Arcana. It's the last 22 cards that we have to talk about. We already have 56 cards down. We just have another 22. It's okay. We'll get through it. It'll be fine. So, with the Major Arcana, we also have these splits that I spoke about for the whole, just like the whole tarot is split into major and minor, and the minor arcana is split into the suits. You also have some splits in the major arcana. The Fool exists outside of the other 21 cards. So the Fool you set aside. The Fool is the Fool. The Fool is that fresh new energy of trying something new, of going on a journey, of taking a risk. That is what the Fool is. And then the Fool goes through a story, essentially, the story of the major arcana, which will help you 100% remember the cards so much better. It changed my life when I learned about this. It's called The Fool's Journey. I can make a video about it in more detail in the future. For now, I will try to keep it more short and give you a quick look just so you understand the logic of it. So, the first split, as I said, is that the Fool exists outside of those other 21 cards. And then it is followed by the Magician. And the Magician is the start of the first section of the major arcana, because the first section ends with the Chariot. We're going to split it into 777 because it's 21 cards, 3 times 7. And it will all make sense once I tell you the story about it. So we have cards 1 through 7, which is the Magician to the Chariot. Then we have the second section, which is card 8, which is Strength, to card 14, Strength to Temperance. And then the third section is the cards 15 to 21, which is the Devil. For some reason in my script I wrote Tower, but 15 is not the Tower, which is a Devil to the World. So yeah, that's the splits that we have. We have 3 chunks of cards, which already makes it easier, right? Did I do it right though? Let me count again. So we have the Magician, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to the Chariot. Then we start with Strength, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, it's all good. So Strength to Temperance, and then we have the Devil to the World. So with these 3 chunks, we have 3 kind of storylines that build on top of each other that the Fool, as I said, is going through. So card 1 to 7 is how the Fool arrives in the world, essentially, because you arrive in the world with all the magic, with the Magician and all the intuition and those magical things that go on before your birth, essentially. That is kind of the representation of the Fool as well. Like, this is the capabilities that we are born with. We have intuitive wisdom, we have emotional wisdom, and we also have that magic within us and that drive within us that the Magician represents. Then it goes on with the Empress and the Emperor, which can be said to represent the parents. So once you go from just you being you're, I don't know, and a little angel or whatever you believe in the sky, you become a zygote in your mom's body, and then you come out and you meet your parents as the first people that you see. So that's 3 and 4, the Empress and the Emperor. So they represent the energies that we would assign maybe to a mother and a father as well. Which I know it's very like a gender-based dichotomy, but that's how you remember the meanings of these cards. because the Empress is more about nurturing, about building something, and the Emperor is also about building, but more about the action-based aspects, just like we had the queens and the kings. Then with the Hierophant, we have the representation of the system, essentially. Something that is more top down, something that you are taught to believe in. It could be a representation of religion, it could be a representation of school. And the Hierophant card in general just symbolizes the existence within a system. And then with the Lovers, we have this idea of relation to the world, to the outside world. Could be you are relating to other people, or you are discovering new sides of yourself as you are going through school, as you are, maturing. You have the Lovers. And then with the Chariot, this card, I think, is one of the easier ones to understand. It is all about aligned action. It is about taking action towards your goals and following your goals, and also the learning that comes from it. And it is essentially a card of ultimate control over your life without essentially ethics or morals. Those come in later with the later cards. So for example, it would be a banker who amasses a lot of money and feels great about it, and thinks that that is the pinnacle of his existence because he went there and got it, and now he has everything he wants. That is the end of the first chapter. Then we take a sip of water and we talk about the second chapter of the Major Arcana, which is where the Fool starts to look inward and realizes that there is more to the world than this 1 through 7, my family, my job, my school, my relationship. That's not all there is to life, right? That's why we're learning tarot. And that's where we start out with the 8 as well. The 8 is all about contending with those patterns that we have, maybe something that some people would call inner demons, the shadows that we have within us, the urges, the issues. That's what the Strength card is about. The lion represents that. The lion represents those more wild parts of us that do not have space in that world 1 through 7, in that normal world. Those parts of us don't have space. And now we discover they exist within us, and there's more to us than just our job, our money, our house. So that's where the 8 comes in. Then the 9 is, of course, the isolation, to reflect on yourself, the isolation to get insight about who you actually are. It could also be, if we look at it externally, the wise man on the mountain that is often displayed in movies. So that's what we have with the Hermit. And then 10 is the realization that the world is not always fair, and that the world goes on. Even if we feel bad, the world keeps turning. There are a lot of things that we cannot control in this world. And then 11, justice, is finding your own sense of justice. It is finding your own sense of what is right, what is wrong, what do I believe in, what is morally correct for me and what isn't. So starting to kind of grapple with the idea of morals. Then with the 12, we have the Hanged Man, which is, of course, the idea of seeing the world differently. Now that you have all of these insights, you see the world differently, right? Suddenly you realize injustices in the world. You realize all of the things you cannot control, and you realize the things that you can control within yourself. So that's what the Hanged Man represents as a card. And then we have 13, which is death, which often is read as the ego death and the total change of relating to the world. Because as we go through this process of the cards before, Justice, Wheel of Fortune, you realize that your ego is not in the end so important. Like internally, you realize that there is more to the world than just you and your life. There's more to the world even than just your inner world and your inner worries. There's also a whole world of things that happens around you that you cannot control, and goals that you cannot reach on your own, maybe. So death is all about that. The new perspective from the 12 comes in and combines with you letting go of that ego, that idea that you had built of yourself beforehand. And then with 14, we have temperance, this idea of achieving a sort of balance, achieving a balance of how you see the world and how you exist within it. Oh, by the way, I just remembered I also have individual videos about a lot of these cards where I talk for 20 minutes about single cards. That is going to be a lot more detailed than this. So you can also watch my single card study videos. All right, before we get now to the third stage, let's take a sip of water, comment, or do whatever you want. Yeah, here we are. So temperance gives us this idea of, okay, we had the ego death, but now temperance wise, we're kind of becoming good again. We had this realization that we need to create balance and justice in the world and within ourselves and with everything we relate to. Now comes in number 15, the devil, of course. So that is temptation at the end of the day, because we have a very, biblical read here. The devil is temptation. Maybe you could think of this as the temptation of a mindless life, because 1 through 7, just your school, your job, um, your relationship, your, I don't know, house, boat, whatever people can have, that is a very simple, mindless life. Not concerned about justice in the world, not concerned about what is going on inside of you, not concerned with any of that. And that is the temptation that then comes back of like, well, maybe there's some things that I can retain, some structures that are good for me. Could also be addictions, something like smoking, caffeine addiction, phone addiction. That's the devil. And it's this little glimmer of hope within us where we're like, maybe it can work. Even if I keep doing this, maybe it can work. Maybe even if I keep doing these patterns that I don't like about myself, I can still live a good life. Well, here comes in the tower number 16, which is the idea of exposing and shaking up structures that do not work for you. Most of the time when I see this card coming up, I know it scares people sometimes, like, oh, something terrible is going to happen to me. That's not necessarily it. It's more that it's showing you unsustainable patterns that you can still correct. You can still rectify this. You can still go within yourself, go back to the whole, this process of, shadow work, going within yourself, spending time alone, creating balance again. And if you do that, you can prevent that tower moment a lot of the time. Not always, but a lot of the time. So those unsustainable patterns, those, grounds that didn't work, they get shaken up, they get destroyed. That's what the tower is all about. And then the world is good again because we go through the healing process. 17 is the star. It's the beginning of healing, the deeper understanding of why you are who you are and why you act the way you act. Because it's never a linear process of you realize a problematic pattern, change it, and the world is great. It doesn't really work like that. So the star is then one of the final stages of integration. You are integrating a lesson, you are healing, and you are understanding why things are the way they are. And the moon is then another, even more deeper examination of yourself, so that you can emerge with the sun, where the sun has brought light upon all aspects of you. Those hidden aspects that you didn't want to face, those hidden reasons behind the patterns, the negative patterns that you might have had in your life, then are illuminated by the sun and fully integrated as you see them. And that then brings us to 20, which is judgment, which is the higher calling, the higher purpose. You find yourself, you know why you're here. And as I said, this is not a one and done process. This is going to happen like 500 times throughout your life. You're going to lose yourself. You're going to realize I slipped into old patterns. You're going to integrate lessons because you reflect on yourself, and so on and so forth. And then with the 21, we have the fulfillment of that purpose. We have the ending. Now, as I said, it's not like this is a from birth to end of life thing. It's a cycle. It's not a process from A to Z. It is a cycle that keeps repeating. But that's it. I just realized we went through 78 cards. We're done. While I was philosophizing about how you have to go through it over and over again, I didn't even give us credit for the fact that we are done with 78 cards. And you probably have notes on 78 cards now. You understand the system a lot better now. So that's something to be really proud of. And you have to understand that we are all the time, at all times, in different parts of this process. You're not one day in the chariot or 1 year in the chariot and then you switch to the strength, and then you examine yourself. It's usually a lot more complicated than that. For example, in your relationship life, in your love life, you are in a different phase than in your career life, in a different phase than in your family life, in a different phase than with your friends or whatever. So see it for how complicated it really is. But this gives you something to understand the whole story of the whole of tarot. I also have a Patreon, by the way, where I do monthly tarot readings and journaling prompts for tarot readings as well. I also bring out affirmations there that you can use. I write essays, I record podcasts. So that goes a lot deeper, and it would mean a lot to me if you at least check it out if you've watched so far. I will put the link below. The URL is super easy. It's just patreon.com/Anya Esma. So you can also just go there by typing it into your browser right now and just taking a peek, and poof, you're in my world. So yes, that's all. Comment below if you found this helpful. The comments help, the likes help. I love it. I can't believe that I did this in one shot. I prepared a lot for this video and I'm very proud of it. So yes, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, and if you want to see more of my face and more of my knowledge and my yapping and my everything. And thank you so much for being here, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye-bye. Enjoy. Read cards for yourself now.